Why, hello there, friends. Watch me realize that I totally forgot to put captions on the instant I go live. I'm like, I'm missing something, and I realize immediately right now that it's captions. So give me a second just to set up captions for perpetuity. There we go. Hello. Here are my captions. They're here now. So hi everyone, welcome to this next installment of Professor Chong's Tabletop Workshop, as I'm figuring out my stream setup as well. Professor Chong's stream workshop, here we go. Want to make sure that the VOD in the future is accessible to as many people as possible, so here we go. Captions are important. They're an important part of this stream. Okay, now that I've got captions all worked out, whoop. Just give me 1 second. There we go. Okay, perfect. Now let's get into the actual meat of the lecture itself. So, before we get started, what is Professor Chong's Tabletop Workshop? Well, I'm glad you asked, because this series is very important to me, and I am very excited to be doing this right here with y'all. Professor Chong's Tabletop Workshop is basically a lecture series where I talk about GM tips, designing encounters, designing games, writing games, talking about becoming a better GM, becoming a better player, etc., etc., etc. So if that's interesting to you and relevant to you, toss us a subscribe on Transplanar RPG, which is where all past VODs of Professor Chong's Tabletop Workshop will be hosted. With that out of the way, a couple of announcements as of the recording of this live stream. Transplanar RPG, which is the channel I'm currently streaming this onto, which is an all-transgender, people of color-led, 100% homebrew, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition live-streamed actual play campaign set in an original, non-colonial, anti-Orientalist world. Our Arc 4 pilot episode, the first episode of Arc 4, streaming this coming Saturday, September 4th at 3 p.m. U.S. Central Time. If you're available then, please tune in on twitch.tv/transplanarrpg. We would love to have you there. And with that announcement out of the way, let's get started with a quick overview of this lecture. I don't think it's going to take too fast. And I'm also just going to adjust the captions again, just to make sure they are fully legible for everyone. Okay, there we go. Overview of this lecture. What are we talking about today? As you can see in the title on the bottom here, this is lecture 10, writing a one-page RPG. So I'm going to start things off with quick introduction of what this means, why this lecture, why now, why me, etc. And then I'm just going to talk about what exactly is a one-page RPG, my theories about the one big idea, right, behind, I think, what I think are the most successful in the sense of, like, interesting to read and play one-page RPGs that I've encountered, as well as my own personal process for designing one. We're going to go over some examples. I'm going to just throw out a bunch of ideas. We're going to parse through Halo and Horns, which is a one-page RPG by yours truly. And then we are going to, together, I'm going to start the process of writing my next one-page RPG. You're going to get an exclusive glimpse into Shut Up About Last Friday, which my patrons, thank you for pledging, which my patrons voted on. Because I put out a poll of which micro RPG I should work on next, and y'all decided it should be Shut Up About Last Friday, which we'll get to at the very end of this lecture. So, with that out of the way, oh my goodness, there are people here. Hi. I fully was like, oh, there's no viewers, so I can just sort of stick around and mess around with my captions. But there are people here. Hello. Hello, Scruff. Hello, Laura. Hi, Ferris. Hi, C. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. So, with the question of the hour, what is a one-page RPG? How do I define it? What does it mean to me? And what does it mean to other people? It is exactly what it says on the tin. A one-page RPG is an RPG fully fleshed out, fully realized, that fits on one page. Now, if you're doing things longhand, it might technically be a two-page RPG. If you're like writing, rules on the front and you have like a character sheet template on the back or something, right? If you have rules on the front for the players, rules on the back for the GM, that's technically, because, you wrote it on a literal piece of like printer paper or something. That's technically a one-page RPG. But if you're scanning that or like putting it into Google Docs or something and uploading it to itch, that comes out to a two-page PDF. So I'm not here to be like a rules cop or like a rules lawyer about what is and isn't a one-page RPG. Some purists out there might be like, if it's a two-page PDF, it's not technically a one-page RPG. I don't care. One or two pages on a PDF. It's a short RPG. It's a super short RPG. They just pick up, read in 15 minutes, and run. Right, like an evening for like friends. Boom. Or for yourself, or for like yourself and one other friend, right? That's what I define as a one-page RPG. Typically fits on one page, maybe two if you're doing it longhand and you use both sides of a piece of paper, which I honestly think is very economical and very smart. Generally speaking, one-page RPGs are simple. They're really straightforward. They're fast to pick up and read and run. And they typically have like a stellar concept, right, at the very heart of it. And they're just fun, right? We're gonna talk about some examples later on, but like classic one-page RPGs, Lasers and Feelings, Honey Heist, they're just fun. Like you're like, oh yeah, I get to play a goddamn bear in Honey Heist that's trying to heist some honey. That's fun, right? There's a D8 table where I can have a funny hat, right? That's great, right? The one-page RPG, perfect opportunity for you to just sort of like dick around and have fun, right? Both as a designer and as the person running it and as the person playing it, if it is a one-page RPG that has a GM in the rules. So why one-page RPGs? Why make or play them? Well, aside from the fun factor, I think as a designer, one-page RPGs are a fantastic way for you to cut your teeth, right? Learn the ropes, knock out some ideas, hammer in some, nails you've been working around with. A great trajectory that you could take when you're first wrapping your head around tabletop, analog game design is to write a couple of one-pagers, and then expand them into micro RPGs, which are just like RPGs under like, I don't know, there's no like standardized page setting, I think, in RPGs. Micro RPGs are just like RPGs that aren't like full rule books, right? Like not like 60, 80 page behemoths. They're more like maybe like 10 page RPGs, 10 to 30 pages, maybe, even that's getting to be like a mid-length RPG, right? And slowly work your way up until you can do like the D&D player's handbook version of like your game, right? Across 3 editions, kickstart it, 3 hardbook versions of the game you want to make, right? And so that's one reason, aside from just fun, for why you should design one-page RPGs. You get experience, right? Another a reason why I design one-page RPGs, and I think other people should too, is because it's a great creative exercise. You work on one concept, right, at the core of your one-page RPG. You get to throw in wacky mechanics, you get to experiment with stuff, right? Just like put stuff in that you're like, this wouldn't make sense to put into like my full-length, like more serious game, but fuck it. Like I'll take this mini game and I'll throw it in and I'll make a one-page RPG out of it, right? It's a great design exercise. It's a great place for you to sort of like experiment with stuff, right? And the third reason why I think people should design more one-page RPGs is it's a great way to pad your resume, frankly. You can like point people who might want to hire you for like a freelance writing or editing gig for their own RPG, I'd be like, hey, here are some one-page RPGs I've written, take a look. They may not completely fit what you're making, but these prove that I know what I'm talking about, right? These prove that I've put stuff out on itch or Drive-Thru RPG or wherever you might host your projects, right? It's also a great way to make some money, a little bit of moolah on the side. If you put out a bunch of one-page RPGs on itch, that's just more streams of revenue for yourself, right? And they're also a great way to, if you're trying to be more active in the scene, you can reach out to people who have like an actual play podcast or an actual play stream channel or something and be like, hey, I wrote this one-page RPG that I think fits with your mission statement, that like fits with the games you're interested in playing. It's super low commitment, right? I'll give you the PDF for free. I'd love for you to like play it on stream sometime, right? And that can like bring some traffic to your itch store. And like help you, more importantly than that, like help you meet more people in the TTRPG sphere, right? One-page RPGs, low commitment, actual play, material, fodder, throw them at people, use them to network, use them to pad your resume, right? So aside from that, that's basically my lowdown on what one-page RPGs are, why I think they're important, why I think they're fun, and why I think more people should make and play them. Outside of that, let's move into the actual design process behind creating one-page RPGs, which is the reason why you're all here. So let's start with this idea of the one big idea. Right, the concept with a high capitalized C for one-page RPGs, right? What's your concept? What is the one big idea at the heart of your one-page RPG? Get specific, right? Write it out, put it on a post-it, paste it at the very top of your brain dump Google Doc, however you design your games. Circle it, tattoo it onto your goddamn skin, memorize it. Everything you do, every rule that ends up sticking in the final version of your one-page RPG should serve this concept somehow. Either strengthen it, deepen it, complexify it, mirror it, talk back against it, offer a ritual in service of it, whatever. Right. And what I mean by this is I'll dive into this a little bit more deeply when we talk about examples. But just to bring one up right now, Honey Heist is a one-page RPG. And the central concept is you want to steal some honey and you're a bear. You want to steal honey from HoneyCon, I think like 2017 is what they have it in, is in the rules as written. And you're a goddamn bear. So that's the central concept, and I think every rule in Honey Heist just sort of hammers that concept home. It expands upon that concept, it adds fun twists to the concept, it has random tables that like allow for new branches off of that concept. It's great. Honey Heist, it's a lot of fun. You're a goddamn bear trying to steal honey, right? What's your concept? Hammer it home. Figure it out. What's the hook, right? Because one-page RPGs are all about that hook. I think with bigger RPGs, like more full-length RPGs, you have a little bit more latitude. You've got a little bit more wiggle room for your concept. You still want to have a nice concept at the center of any RPG, but I think it's particularly important for a one-pager because it's going to be the difference between someone picking up your RPG versus someone else's one-page RPG. They're probably going to be looking at the concept that draws them to it, right? And honestly, sometimes a really good concept can even like make up for half-baked mechanics. You know what I mean? Like, because people are like, oh, it's still a really cool concept, even if these mechanics, aren't like super thought out or whatever. The concept's still really cool, and I still want to pick up this game and play it, right? And I'm gonna like knock on myself a little bit here. Halo and Horns is the first ever and the only published one-page RPG that I have out there. And honestly, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about Halo and Horns later. But looking at it, I'm like, wow, like I'm proud of myself for it. I really am, and I think it was, I'm very proud of what I made. It was a great learning exercise, and I think now looking at it, I'm like, okay, the mechanics could be stronger, right? Like I could have written them a little bit more like specifically or intentionally, I think, in a way that was just to like carry out the themes of what I was playing with. But people loved the themes behind the big concept behind Halo and Horns, which if you don't know what it is, it's a one-page RPG for two GMs, an angel and a devil, who are trying to persuade one player, the mortal, to do their bidding, right? And like the game ends when the mortal does either what the angel wants them to do or what the devil wants them to do. And people are like, oh my god, that sounds like so much fun. I want to play it. And it's seen like some shine on like various actual play channels. Like people have like streamed it. People have like told me that they played it, that they liked it, etc. And that's been like it's been so affirming, and it's been like so awesome to see people play this game, because that's all I really want, right? I want people to play my games and have fun playing them, because that's what matters at the end of the day for me. But yeah, I honestly think like when I said like the mechanics were kind of half-baked, I was kind of thinking of Halo and Horns. Not that, I don't want to like knock my own shine a little bit here, but like there's always, the concept. My point is the concept at the heart is what's really important here, right? And if your mechanics can really hammer that thing home, then great, right? You're on your way to making a fantastic one-page RPG. And I might put out like Halo and Horns version 2 with like updated rules. Electric Boogaloo. We'll see. You should still buy it though. Take a look at it. See what I did well, see what I did not so great. Hack it, write your own rules for Halo and Horns and message me about it. Tell me what works, what doesn't. So yeah. Sort of going along the theme, what I'm trying to say of for putting the mechanics aside for a little bit, ask yourself, once you've got this awesome concept, ask yourself, how should people feel while they're playing this game, right? And start there. Because how I wanted people to feel playing Halo and Horns is kind of like they were playing an improv game, but with a little bit more rules, but it's super collaborative, right? And it's all about listening to the other people at the table, and building upon the ideas that they've already established, right? And like saying yes to a lot of things, both for the mortal, who sort of has to just go around with like the ridiculous shit that their GMs are throwing at them, but also for the GMs at each other, right? Because it is at its core an antagonistic game. It's kind of PvP, more like GM vs GM, because you're literally an angel and a devil trying to get this one person to do something. So it is like kind of antagonistic in that way, but because it's antagonistic, it's a game about listening, right? Because you don't actually want the GMs as GMs, not as the forces they control, to feel like angry at each other or frustrated. Because that's not how I want people to feel playing this game. I want people to feel like, oh, we're all working together to fail, right? Like we're all working together to weave this like hilarious, wacky, ridiculous, goofy story of this hapless mortal caught between the throes of these two like godlike beings, right? Who are the GMs. And that's how I wanted people to feel playing it. And having watched a couple of the actual plays of people who have played this game, chaotic is like the one word I would use to like very confidently describe the experience of playing Halo and Horns. So if you're into some pure chaos, try this game out. And think about, in terms of the one-pagers you're writing, what's like the feeling? How do you want your players to walk away having played this RPG feeling, right? Something else, what do you think about the one big idea? Really, get experimental, right? Get experimental in the execution of your one big idea. Otherwise, like, what's the point? Like as I was doing research for this lecture, I was looking up some one-page RPGs that other people had written, and some of them were like, like, for example, like Lasers and Feelings was really specific. You're like a crew, and like there's a specific captain character that they name, right? And like your crew's trying to do this. You're trying to stop. We're gonna do a deep dive later, but you like the GM decides like what you're trying to do, but you're sci-fi people, you're sci-fi androids or robots or aliens or humans or like space mercenaries or whatever in space. You have a ship together, you're a crew, you're working together, and you've got two stats, lasers and feelings, right? And that, that's fun. You've got like random tables that you can decide your traits. You get to choose, if you're higher ranked in feelings or lasers. It's a lot of fun. It's great fun. And I think that the execution of lasers and feelings, the mechanics are not necessarily super experimental, but they definitely can be, depending on what kind of one-page RPG you want to write, right? And like one-pagers are such a great opportunity for you to just get wacky, right? Like for you to be like, this this like weird percentile dice plus D12 plus D4 system I've got, you know, probably won't fit my like full length 80-page hardcover RPG I want to publish on Kickstarter later, but it might make a great, you know, one pager for me to just test out that mechanic, like super low commitment, low pressure, low risk, low stake, right? Go for it. And now I think this is a good segue into the actual design process of making a one-page RPG, or at least mine, right? Because every designer works differently, so this is just me, right? And this might be helpful to you, might not, but I hope that, you know, if you're here, you'll be able to get some ideas out of my blabbering at you. So my process for designing a one-pager starts pretty much the same as designing any other more full-length RPG. I'm always thinking, what are the players doing? What are the characters doing, right? And like more meta-narratively, what are the characters trying to accomplish and what is stopping them from accomplishing that? And then once I've sort of figured out the answers or started answering these questions, I look at how does this game begin? What do the players and the characters do in the middle of it? And how does this game end for a one-page RPG? And I try to think of like clear, tangible, visible start, mid, and end states for these. So to use Halo and Horns as an example, you begin by the GMs decide if they want to be the angel or if they want to be the devil, right? And then the GMs also start by picking a specific goal, objective that they want the mortal to accomplish that is hidden from the mortal. But if you're streaming this, because this one pager is optimized for an actual play environment, if you're streaming this or podcasting this or whatever, live studio audience, you could also have your audience decide what the goal is. So there's like this idea of, what's it called? Dramatic irony, right? Where the audience knows what the GMs are trying to get the mortal player to do, but the mortal player doesn't. And in the improv game I adapted this from, typically the mortal player leaves the room, right? They leave the room so they don't know what the audience suggestion is, and they come back, and it's essentially it's a guessing game in improv. So yeah, that's how it begins, with that guessing, with the determination of what the objective is that is hidden from the mortal players, and the mortal player comes in, and that's the middle. The middle is the playing of it. The middle is the mortal player being like, oh, I'm just trying to have a normal day. That's the mortal player's objective. While the two GMs are trying to, like, through scene painting, through NPCs, through, like, scene transitions, through, like, making things happen as GMs, like, try to push that mortal player toward completing their objective, right? So for the devil player, it could be, like, text every single one of your exes. It could be, like, burn down a church. It could be take a cop car for a joyride. You know, for the angel GM, it could be, like, adopt an entire shelter of kittens. You know, it could be like post like an Instagram influencer apology video on YouTube, you know, or like call your mom and apologize to her, right? And the more different the objectives are, the funnier and wackier I think it gets. But yeah, that's the entire middle of it. And it takes as long as it takes, and it ends when the mortal does one of the two things, or when one of the GMs just throws in the towel. They're like, whatever, I don't care. Like, fine, you win, you know. But I think I wrote in the PDF of it, whatever's funnier, like, do that first, right? If it's funnier for the mortal to, like, having guessed what the objectives are, to do one of the objectives, or for one of the GMs to just give up and, like, end the game that way, right? But I find that the GMs tend to be really stubborn. The GMs tend to want to win in the actual plays I've watched. So that's been really great playtesting feedback, actually, that I've witnessed. And I think, sorry, I'm talking about Halo and Hordes now, but I think this is also useful for people watching this in terms of like the process of a one-page RPG. I think I should make it more clear in an update to the rules that this is a guessing game. Right? That the mortal, instead of just trying to have a normal day, they should be trying to guess what the objectives are. And once they figured them out, then they can choose to either do one or like be like, fuck both of y'all. I'm gonna go about my own way. One of you needs to throw in the towel. I'm my own mortal, right? Something like that. So figure out what the characters are trying to accomplish, what's stopping them. What are the players doing during this, and is it different from what the players are trying to do? And what is the GM doing if there is a GM, and is it different from what the players are trying to do, right? Figure out generally like what a beginning, middle, and end for your one-page RPG could look like. And now it's time to put pen to paper, right? It's time to just brainstorm. That's my next step. Once I figured out these like basic concepts, these building blocks of my game, I just brain dump. I'm like, oh, what if this was a rule? Or what if I did this? Or like, what if the players were these archetypes? Or like, what if there's a random table that did this? Or like, what if the GM could do this? Or like, oh, what if like a stats, instead of stats that you pick at the beginning, it's like a sliding scale of stats, you know, you're either this or you're that, and you're always at, you know, 50% this and 50% that, or 70% this and 30% that, or whatever. And I like throw all this shit into a big document, and I think about stuff, and I stare at that document real hard, and I get up and I make myself a sandwich, and I eat the sandwich angrily, and I come back and I stare at it some more. This is an important part of my process. And once I've got this brainstormed brain dump, just sort of blah, like in a Google Doc, I will separate the wheat from the fallow, right? The wheat from the chaff. Or I'm not a farmer, but you know what I mean? The good stuff from the bad stuff. I'm just gonna sort of like copy and paste the good stuff up top, and then I'm gonna put the bad stuff on the bottom. And bad here is super subjective. Bad, I think, just means mechanics that don't serve my vision right now. And I never exactly delete the quote-unquote bad stuff. I just sort of put it aside. I put it in a different document for later. I basically save it as trimmings for broth, for other stuff that I might make down the road, or this is the stuff I had to go through in order to reach the final form of this game I wanted to make, right? So nothing you do is a waste of time, I think, is another important thing and design principle to just keep in mind. Like, even if you spend like an entire week working on this thing and you're like, oh, I hate these mechanics, and you end up not using any of it, you had to go through that process to reach the conclusion of the next step you had to take anyway. So don't beat yourself up, right? Like, there's no right or wrong in a design process. They're only just, I'm so Buddhist when I say it. There only just is, right? So don't beat yourself up during this process. Embrace it. This is the fun part, right? This is the design part. This is what we live for as game designers. This is the stuff that brings us joy, right? When we're writing these mechanics, it's the fun stuff, and embrace the process and the journey, right? So once I finish my brainstorm brain dump, and I've sort of separated the stuff I want to keep from the stuff I want to save for later, or just toss into the broth, right? Of my subconscious, the trimmings of my subconscious. Then it is time to think about economy of space, right? Because for a one-page RPG, being really intentional about what you leave in and what you leave out is critical here. Because you've only got, as Eminem says, you've only got one chance, one shot, one opportunity here, right? Don't squander it. It's the one page. The stuff on this page is your game. So you have to now just look at the stuff that you like and think to yourself, like, what I do is I go piece by piece. Does this serve my game? Yes, I'll keep it. Does this serve my game? No, broth. Does this serve my game? Yes, keep it. Does this serve my game? No, broth, right? And I just sort of go through it and I separate it some more. And then I start expanding on the rules that I've decided to keep. I start writing the game. I might start with some flavor text, depending on the premise of the game. I might start with some mechanics that I know have to be in it. I'm like, okay, there's no way this game can work without mechanics that do X, Y, and Z, right? And I start hammering out the foundations for those, and that's it. I start writing, right? Put it away, come back the next day, start writing some more, put it away, come back the next day, edit what I've written. The final process for me is just sort of the refining. Once I have mechanics that sort of fill a page, I refine, I edit it down. I'm like, can this sentence be shorter? Okay, great. Can this sentence be shorter? Okay, great. Do I need this flavor text here? Okay, great. I take it out. Do I need this example here? No, I take it out, right? One-page RPGs, because you have such a limited like canvas to work with, you can make a lot of assumptions. One, you can just assume that your audience knows what an RPG is. You don't have to explain what an RPG is, right? Which several like longer length texts do. Fuller length, rather. The second assumption is, what kind of genre are you working in? You can just assume that your audience knows the basic genre tropes you're working with. If your one-page RPG is horror, you can assume the audience knows that zombies are dangerous. You don't have to say zombies are dangerous, or that werewolves are affected by the moon. Unless your one-page RPG is literally called, like, Ocean Wolves. Werewolves that turn because of the ocean, right? Then you might want to explain that a little bit, right? But, like, things that you don't have to explain, don't explain, right? And then it's time for, and then you know, if you want to, you can make a cool little layout or hire someone to like make a layout for you, right? Then put it on itch or put it on DriveThruRPG or wherever you publish, or like send it off to your publisher if you have a working relationship with someone and be like, publish this game of mine, please, or put it in a zine or something. Boom, send it off, put a sticker, price it out, value yourself, sell your game for money. You can have community copies. That's a way to get around, oh, but I don't want to charge for my game. Just make community copies, but let people pay you for your game. Please, please, please let people pay you for your game. Even if it's quote unquote just a one-page RPG, you deserve to be paid. You do. So price it out. I honestly don't think you should be pricing your one-page RPG anything lower than $3, right? Say $3 on itch, suggest $5. Most people will pay the $5. I promise you they will. And people who don't want to pay will just take a community copy, or who can't pay. We're not going to shame anyone here, right, for taking a community copy. Make community copies available if that's important to you, or don't. If you're like, you know what, I want people to pay for my games. Straight up, do that, right? It's up to you. Don't feel bad about that. Put it out there, boom, and see how people respond. And then move on to your next project, right? Because congratulations, you put out a one-page RPG. Hurrah! I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of myself as well for doing this and being a part of this. And yeah, make your next one-page RPG, write your next micro RPG, start working on your full-length RPG, or go back to whatever projects you've been working on and putting off in the process of making your one-page RPG, because I know that's what I've been doing. So I think I'm going to take a pause here to drink some water as always and check on the chat, because I have not been looking at chat this entire time to just sort of talk. Oh my god, the Bobo fur on the mic arm? Is it still there? Is Mr. Bobo's fur still on this mic arm? It might be. C keeps telling me that I need to change my stream setup so it's not like an arm like right in front of the camera coming down at me, and I agree. And I recently got a very cool webcam that should be higher quality that I'm very, very, very excited to be using. Farrah says, Honey Heist got me into DMing. Hell yeah. Honey Heist is so much fun. I have actually not had the pleasure of either running it or playing it, but so many of my friends have either ran or played it, and I feel like I'm left out, and I want someone to run it for me. I want someone to run it for me, and I want to be a bear. I want to be a bear with a bowler hat and a little monocle. I want to be a panda bear. I want to be a panda bear, and no one can say that I can't be a panda bear. And I hope that I'm a panda bear with a very high criminal stat. Or not. I'll just wig out. I'll bear out. Actually, speaking of Honey Heist, let's move on to the next part of this, which is examples. Heck yes, examples of the games I am talking about. I hope I did this right. Yay, here it is. So let's dissect Honey Heist. Our favorite game here, Honey Heist. If you don't know what this is, let's just read through this game together, because guess what? Guess what? It's a one-pager, so we can do it. So this is a game by Grant H. Give them a follow. Just search, I think, Grant Howitt on Twitter. They are a fantastic game designer. Check them out. We are going to credit our game designers here. Yes, we are. This is the official PDF of Honey Heist. As you can tell, super classic, right? Game. It's handwritten. It's on the one page. Look at this beautiful panda bear. I love it. Right? Who doesn't? So let's start Honey Heist. Game by Grant H. 2017, with thanks to all out of Bubblegum, 316, and weirdly Polaris. It's HoneyCon 2017. You're going to undertake the greatest heist the world has ever seen. 2 things. 1, you have a complex plan that requires precise timing. 2, you are a goddamn bear! That's right, you are a goddamn bear! So, to start things off, beautiful, Grant. You roll 3d6 to determine your descriptor, your role, and your bear type. Perfect. So this is obviously an example of a random table, right? So Grant here is using a random table to determine the kinds of bears that the PCs will be playing. Lovely. So descriptor and 3d6. Perfect. Each d6 determines the descriptor, bear type, and the role, which just allows you to hit the ground running. And Grant here doesn't say, or you can choose the descriptor. It doesn't matter. You can pick, because it's sort of, Grant doesn't need to, I like that I'm calling this person Grant, because Grant H. Yeah, I'm just going to keep calling this designer Grant. Grant doesn't feel the need to explain that you can do all these things, because guess what? Grant's only got one page. Perfect. I'm sure that if, around the table that you're sitting at, you roll 3, I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to build a bear. Roll 3d6. That's a 6. That's a 6. That's a 6. I rolled 3 6s, which means I am an incompetent honey badger. Carnage is my skill. face. So I am a pissed off honey badger who's really bad at my job, which is carnage. And my role in this heist is that I am, you can't see it because of my face cam, but 6 is the face. I am the face of this heist, which is so funny. But I obviously, if I play this with my friends, I could be like, you know what? I don't want that. I want to be a honey badger and I want to be incompetent, but I don't want to be the face. You know what? I'm gonna roll again, or I'll just pick one. I'm gonna be the muscle, because that makes sense. I'm the incompetent carnage honey badger muscle. And I'm sure I could just do it. Right? One-page RPG, if you're playing it at home and you're like, these mechanics don't make sense, or like, I don't want to do this, Grant's not gonna break down your door and be like, how fucking dare you? I'm sure Grant would be like, sure, go for it. Like, whatever's more fun for you, go for it, right? Choose instead of roll. You can just do it, right? And you don't have to explain that in the text of your rules. You can assume that your players that your audience will just do what they want with their game, because that's what I'm gonna do, right? If I'm playing a one-page RPG. Let me just shrink this down over here and make this a little bit bigger. There we go, just so you can see a little bit more. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, let me just shrink this down just a bit more, because otherwise I don't think I can scroll all the way. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Whoops. Sorry, let me just pull this out a bit more. There we go. Okay. Once you've figured out your descriptor, your bear type, and your role, you name your bear if you want. You're not a talking bear per se, but you can sort of mangle human speech through your bear mouth, maybe? You can talk to each other, though. So this is beautiful. This is a beautiful bit of mechanics plus flavor text. Because here, Grant, the voice of the designer is so clear here. You're not a talking bear per se, but you can sort of mangle human speech through your bear mouth, maybe. Hell yes. This just sort of also like hammers home the kind of game this is, which is kind of a goofy game, like a game where you're a bear, you know, and you do bear things and you can kind of talk like a bear, right? This is obvious. This is not like a horror game, right? And like just the flavor text is making this so plain here. Just so much about this. I could just parse this word for word. Name your bear if you want. You're not a talking bear per se. Oh, I love the attitude here. But you can sort of, that's another descriptor, mangle, beautiful verb, human speech. So we put bears. Humans have not existed up until this point. Humans have not been named here, right? Up until this point, you can sort of mangle human speech. Now we establish that humans exist, right? And that bears are in opposition to humans existing, right? Perfect. Very optimizing economy of space here, right? Through your bare mouth. Maybe. Not bare maw. Not bare jaw. Not bare teeth. Not bare telekinesis. Bare mouth. Maybe, and the question mark. Perfect, right? You can talk to each other, though, and this is like, I think this is one of those situations where a little bit of exposition is necessary, because I can, as a player reading this, if this parenthetical wasn't here, I'd be like, wait, can we communicate with each other then? And then we'd have to sort of house rule that we can or that we can't. But here in the text of the game says that you can. Perfect, we've answered that question. And the next rule that Grant has come up with are stats. You have 2 stats, which is classic one-page RPG. You've got 2 stats, bear and criminal. You've got 2 stats, lasers and feelings. You've got 2 stats, ocean and wolf. You've got 2 stats, sexy and I know it. You've got 2 stats, pop and sickle. You've got 2 stats, Pringles and Lays. You've got 2 stats, goth and titty. You've got 2 stats. I could keep going forever, right? Just like the 2, that's one way you can just write a one-page RPG. I want someone to write so I can play a one-page RPG called You've Got 2 Stats, right? And the entire one-page RPG is just about a bunch of like a list of things, and you roll on it, and one of them's one of your stats, and the other one is the other one of your stats, and you just play, and that's it. That's all in terms of the ideas I have for that game. So moving on, you have 2 stats, bear and criminal. Perfect. What Grant is saying here is that nothing else matters. The only things that matter in this game are the fact that you're either Really good at being a bear or really good at being a criminal, right? Note that Grant doesn't say, and that you've also got the athletic skill, or you also have perception, right? Or you also have like the vehicle handling, right? Skill. There are no rules for vehicle handling in here because vehicle handling doesn't freaking matter in this game. So you also have to ask yourself what matters in my game and what doesn't. And just throw the stuff that matters into this game and throw the stuff that doesn't away. Get that shit out of here. So both of these stats start at 3. Perfect. What does 3 mean? Who knows? Let's figure this out later. Hopefully the rules will answer that. Use bear to maw stuff, run and climb, shrug off damage, scare people, and generally do bear stuff. Perfect. Now that these skills, let's say, have been put into words, Grant is saying this is what's possible in the world of my game. It is possible to maul stuff. Now we know that violence is a possibility in this game, right? It is possible to run and climb. Now we know that terrain features are a possibility in this game. Shrug off damage. Now we know that these bears can take damage and potentially die. Great. Now we know that that's a possibility. Scare people. People. Interesting. Again, human speech, people. Now we know that people are the antagonistic force here, right? And generally do bear stuff. That's beautiful. Catch-all. It's the act under pressure of Honey Heist. And you use criminal to do anything not directly related to being a bear. That's hilarious. Because that basically means that you could use criminal to drink soup. Because I don't think drinking soup is generally bear stuff. Right? So you would use roll plus criminal to drink soup, or roll plus criminal to write poetry, right? Or roll plus criminal to trick someone, right? Or like open up a bank vault, right? Now we're going to look into actions. Actions. I'm going to pull this up just so you can get a little bit more, because I believe my face cam hides it. Yeah, here it goes. It's going to look kind of ugly, but who cares? Action. And when you act, okay, perfect. When you do anything, when you're trying to do stuff, when you act and the outcome is in doubt, notice this little I love that Grant put this in and the outcome is in doubt, because if it's just when you act, roll a d6, that means every time you act, you have to roll a d6. So love this qualifier, it's necessary, and the outcome is in doubt, roll a d6. If it's equal to or under the relevant stat, you succeed, so you're trying to lowball here. If it's over the stat, you fail. If you're using your bear species skill, interesting. I think this is also a relevant qualifier, bear species, because we have bear stat, but if we roll up here, the bear type and skill, right? My honey badger would be carnage, right? Or doing something covered by your roll, which would be, for me, muscle. Roll 2 dice and pick the lowest. Beautiful. And here is a bonus hat table if you want to wear a hat. And I do. I'm going to roll a d8 to see what kind of hat I get. 8! I get to roll twice! Okay, that's 2. I get a top hat and 6. A fez. That is nasty. That is just some nasty hat business here. I've got a top hat. I think I want to wear the fez on top of the top hat, or have it be a top hat fez. The top hat with a little fez dangling off of it. I love that. Okay, that's my honey badger, which isn't technically, is a honey badger a bear? I don't know. If you can answer that in chat, I would be very grateful. So now let's move on to the other part of these rules. Let's scroll up here. Changing states. This left column is the beginning. This is character creation. This is the beginning of your game. Now we're moving into the middle of your game, right? Changing states. Hey, GM. Oh, this is the first time the rules have mentioned a GM. Now we know that there's a GM. Beautiful. Hey, GM. When a player rolls dice and the lowest dice they roll is a 6. That's bad because we want to roll low. Introduce a twist or unseen complication into proceedings. Perfect. Changing states. I like that Grant is basically addressing the gameplay as changing states, because that also just sort of elucidates Grant's approach to game design and what a game is, right? What a tabletop RPG is for Grant. Grant sees it as changing states. Play is just things that are changing, which I think is a really beautiful approach to RPGs. Overall. Here's another rule. Frustration. When the plan fails and you run into difficulty, move 1 point from criminal into bear. Okay, let's look back here. Both start at 3. Bear's at 3, criminal's at 3. Is this a sliding scale, or are there two different scales that we're looking at? I'm going to assume there are 2 different scales, and perhaps I'll be contradicted later on. Move 1 point from criminal into bear. This actually might be a sliding scale, because if they both start at 3. Then what that means is, if I'm frustrated, if I fail, if I roll only a 6, or if I roll a 5, when I wanted to hit a 3, right? 2 are under the relevant. Oh, so this is sort of like lasers and feelings. Okay, got it. Move 1 point from criminal to bear. So what greed. When the plan goes off without a hitch, move 1 point from bear into criminal. So this is really interesting because something always happens no matter how you roll, which I also really love. So if you fail, you move 1 point into bear. If you succeed when the plan goes off without a hitch, interesting, you move into criminal. And I really, really like that because the mechanics state that no matter what happens, the mechanics are always in play. Something's always happening. The one-page RPG rules are always in flux, which is beautiful. Truly elegant game design here. You can voluntarily move 1 point from bear to criminal by doing a flashback scene, Hello Blades in the Dark, in which you and the other bears plan out the heist over coffee and cigarettes in the back room of a seedy bar. So this is similar to the flavor text here. Name your bear if you want. But this is super evocative. The rules basically say this is what happens. The players, I guess, could house rule, no, we're gonna plan out the heist over tea and mahjong underwater inside a submarine. You could technically, I think, decide that, but the rules say, hey, this is what happens. And the rules, because this is in the text of the rules, it sets the tone, it sets the themes of the game, and it sets the possibilities of the game, right? Like just so clearly in the rules. And let's look at the economy of space here, right? This is a A4 piece of printer paper. This description of the heist, you can voluntarily move 1 point. You can voluntarily move 1 point of criminal into bear by eating a load of honey as well. This entire chunk, this entire paragraph is like, let's just do some like geometry here. Let's see. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 1/5 of one column. That's 10% roughly. That is 10% of the rules. It's just dedicated to like a description of like the coffee and cigarettes, the back room, the load of honey, the flashback. That's 1/10 of the rules, which I also think is beautiful, right? Like I love that that's what Grant has dedicated 1/10 of the rules toward. I think that was a perfect, beautiful choice. And the end, like I mentioned before, this is the beginning, this is the middle, and this is the end. Right? This is the end state of the game. If your criminal stat ever reaches 6, you are lured into a life of crime and betray the party. If your bear stat ever reaches 6, you flip out bear style, Oppa bear style, and lose it. Presumably to be picked up by animal control in half an hour or so. Lovely. So, I love it. Grant lays out, this is the end state. Criminal reach 6 or bear reach 6. That's how the game ends. And this is what happens if criminal reaches 6. This is what happens if bear reaches 6. Lovely. And I love that it assumes you are lured into a life of crime and betray the party. There's no other end state for criminal stat reaching 6, which is perfect. If your bear stat reaches 6, you flip out bear style and lose it. Also perfect, right? This is just such a beautiful way to end the game because I can just already tell Honey Heist will be so fun and so chaotic. And I haven't even played the game yet. It's just based on how the game is written, the mechanics that make things possible, and the end states that are possible through the rules. I just know it's going to be chaotic and fun. So random tables to set up the adventure. Great. Grant. Okay. Basically, the game could end here. The rules could end here. It could just end here, the end, half an hour or so, and we don't need these tables. Right? But this is like a third of the rules are these random tables to help set up the adventure, to help flesh out the premise. Also something important to note, right? these are not random encounters necessarily. These are fleshing out the structure of what you will do. And Grant's basically saying, hey, run with it. I've given you some hammers, I've given you some sticks, I've given you a shit ton of honey, and I've given you a ton of bears. Run with it, is basically what Grant's saying. And I think it's important that, these are the tables that Grant has included. Table number 1, HoneyCon 2017, is held in A. These are the descriptors, and these are the locations. Beautiful. Aside from loads of honey, the prize is, so this complicates the goal here a little bit. What is a little bit of a complication to the goal? What other prize could the bears be working toward? 1 through 6, you sort of read on your own here. And then security features, perfect. Now the GM knows these are the obstacles I could throw at my players. Convention organizer. This is a major NPC I could throw in here, and this is how I can play them. And little do the bears know, beautiful, this is a twist. GM, keep this secret, love it. Players don't read this, or don't know what this is. Also, I realize my captions have not been going this entire time, and I'm so sorry about that. Probably because they were all the way at the bottom. My gravest apologies. I'm gonna put the captions back up here. Very sorry about that. Google meets how dare you betray me. Okay, here we go. My apologies about that. Little do the bears know, this is beautiful. The twist. This place is rigged to blow. The prize is a fake. They've been set up. A rival team of bears. The cops are en route. The bees are angry. Love it. Beautiful. 10 out of 10 honey heist game. Look at it. I think my favorite part, obviously aside from the bear drawings and the bonus hat table, was just chef's kiss. What a beautiful little bonus little hat table. That's like also such a great way to market your game. Hey, if you want to be a bunch of bear criminals, also there's a hat that tells you there's a table that tells you what kind of hat you want to wear. That's beautiful. I'd be like, I want to play that game. I'll download it. I'll pay money for it. Here, let me open up this itch link, because that's just so enticing. Think about ways you can market your game too, because this is such a marketable game, right? It's so, it's just so catchy. I want to play it, right? It's so fun. Anyway, aside from the obvious, right? I think my favorite part of this one-page RPG, I think is the twist table. I think that's my favorite part, right? And if I don't want to say my gripe about it, this is just more of like a really small, like if I had to change anything about this, it would just for there to be a version that's like typed up maybe, because I sometimes struggle to read the handwriting a little bit, but that's honestly just probably because I have ADHD as well. But that was, I like that it was black and white and it was legible, but sometimes it was a little hard for me to read. But other than that, beautiful game. I love it. I'm really sad that I haven't played it or ran it yet, and I would love to. I'm going to keep an eye on time here, and I'm going to gauge my own energy levels here, and I'm going to say that I had several other games, one-page RPGs, Lasers and Feelings, for example, Scrolls and Swords, specifically also Everyone is John, and let's see. Big motherfucking crab truckers that I wanted to go over, but I'm feeling kind of tired, and I feel like I did a pretty deep delve into Honey Heist, so I'm going to hold off on that and talk about other things. I also feel like I did a pretty deep delve into Halo and Horns already, so I don't necessarily think I'm going to pull that PDF up and just like nitpick everything into it, because I'm really excited and I want to get to the next part of this lecture, which is starting to design a game on stream, right? Like live, and now you can see me putting all of these ideas into action and actually starting to flesh it out and like design a game of my own. So before I do that, I'm going to take a sip of water, keep an eye on chat. Laura says, Peter says the arm in your face is very distinctive. I don't want to be known for the arm in my face. No, because I feel like I also like when I'm trying to look up here, I'm like, or like when I'm GMing my players, I have to look past, you can see my eyes getting crossed. I have to like look past the mic arm to like look at my notes or like look into my players' face cams. Yeah, I'm excited to change up my stream setup. I don't know if it looks very professional with the arm here, and it's also a little obstructive to myself. Yeah, so Connie, I want ocean wolves. I want ocean wolves as well. Ferris says, Connie, do you want to be in Honey Heist? I'm doing for goblets and gays. Yes, I do. Ferris, please let me play with you in goblets and gays. I want to be a bear. I want to be a panda bear. I want to be a beautiful, delicious, adorable panda bear. I would love that. Please let me play with you. Also, everyone follow Goblets and Gays on Twitter. Goblets and Gays is a all queer Pathfinder 2nd edition actual play podcast. They're great. Give them a listen. Follow them on Apple Podcasts. Give them a listen on Spotify. Rate them on Apple Podcasts, etc., etc., etc. They're fantastic. C says, Connie just popping off the one-page RPG ideas. You know it. I've got so many in this brain of mine. I've just so many wacky ideas. Laura says, I'll run it for you. Laura, please run Honey Heist for me. I want to play all the heists with all the honey. Let's see. They are not. They just consume the same substance. Thank you, Ferris. I knew it. I was like, honey badger. The name badger is in the name, but I feel like I'm the type of person to get tricked by animal facts. I'd be like, it's a honey badger. Of course it's a badger, not a bear. And then someone will poke their head out and be like, actually, it's a bear. It's not a badger, it's a bear. And I'll be like, God damn it. In the weasel family, that makes sense. Because koalas are not bears. They're marsupials. They're called koala bears, but they're marsupials. America, Australia, explain. Australia, explain. Okay, moving on. So let's make a game together, shall we? We shall. Let me open up my oh my god. Oh lord. Okay, here it is. Let me open up the Google Doc I have here. There we go. So the game we are going to be getting started on writing today, I'm not going to write all of it today, I'm just going to get started on it, is called Shut Up About Last Friday. My patrons, my beautiful patrons who are in chat right now, Ferris, Scruff I think is lurking, C, and Laura, voted on this. I had a bunch of one-page RPG ideas, but they voted on this one. Overwhelming majority of the vote, 8 out of 15 votes so far, voted for me to make Shut Up About Last Friday, which is a 2+ player GM-less game about a group of friends trying to do something normal, like go bowling or karaokeing, but you just can't, no matter what, all caps, talk about what happened last Friday. And I think in the Patreon text, this was italicized, which is important. And I have a couple of brain dump ideas already in my, Moleskin game design notebook. So I'm just going to open it up. I had been ready. I was really surprised that this is the one that got the majority of the vote. I was expecting the vote to go to Don't Push the Button, which I already had several ideas written out for, but I'm just going to leave it at that, not say anything else about that game. Let's see. Let me just flip open my page here. Just right off the bat, if you're listening or watching, I want you to think to yourself, if I were Connie, if I were designing this game, what mechanics would I put in? What would I expect to want to play with if I were playing in this game, right? And like what twists or like fun little experimental things would I want to throw in here? What kind of player archetypes would I be playing with, etc., 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 etc. I challenge you, if you're watching this, to come up with some of these on your own as well. Let's see. You know what? I can't find it right now because I, again, have ADHD and my notes are all a mess, but I'm just going to see what I can remember off the top of my dome. So what happened? Right off the dome, my brainstorm goes to what happened last Friday, right? You know, and it's got to be something bad, humiliating, scary, weird, bizarre, mystical, spiritual, magical, dangerous, conspiracy-esque, etc., because the friends can't talk about it. Can't talk about it. What is the game? Okay, this might seem like a weird let me scroll down here so you can see. This might seem like a weird question to ask myself as I'm designing, but I'm specifically thinking about this from an improv perspective. So games in improv are sort of like what makes a scene funny. So there are various games that can happen in an improv scene. This is sort of like improv 201. Like escalation can be the game in a scene, right? Like it could, the scene could be anything. Two dudes fishing. One dude was like, the old wife cheated on me last week. And the other guy be like, oh, your wife cheated on you. My wife chopped off my toe. And the other guy could be like, oh, well, I didn't get to the bottom of my story. She cheated on me. And then she da-da-da-da-da, and they keep escalating, right? And that's what makes the scene funny. They just keep going up and up and up and up until it gets too outrageous, right? And I've seen tons of improv scenes escalate in that way. What makes a scene funny? Escalation is one. Talking, for example, talking around a problem is another game, which I think is going to be the main game in this game. If that makes, we're getting into meta-ludic bullshit here. Talking around a problem is also a form of a game. Power difference. And we see this in a lot of, they call it master-servant scenes in improv, but I don't really like the term master-servant. I don't really like, let's just say high power, low power. And this is when you have like someone who is clearly of like a low stature or low rank in a scene, and there's someone of a high rank or high stature in a scene. That's also like a game, right? Etc., etc. So I think that the engine of this game, or rather, what is the game? What is the engine of this game? Is gonna be this, and I'm gonna highlight it. And this is how I highlight it for myself. I bold it. Talking around a problem. That's gonna be the majority of the engine of the game for the middle, right? If we're thinking beginning, middle, and end of this game, that's gonna be the majority of what makes this game fun or funny, because I'm also writing this game specifically for an actual play audience. So first of all, this game is a comedy. I also have to write that down. Tone, right? Here's tone. Comedy, goofy, melodramatic, weirdly serious, especially toward the end. I think depending on what the players can't talk about. Okay, you can also hear the dulcet tones of my mechanical keyboard. Okay, so what we have so far. What happened last Friday? What is the game? What's the engine of the game? Talking around a problem. Tone. Okay, beautiful. This is the brain dump part, right, of the process. Let's see. Trying to do something normal. What is the normal thing? Probably random table? Question mark? Right? Or is it always the same no matter who plays? So ideas: bowling, karaokeing, kayaking. What are more normal friend things that people do? Playing D&D. So meta. Let's see. Playing a video game. Right. It could be, if this is a streamed actual play with face cams, then we could simulate the games being on the players being on a video call with each other. That's fun, right? Playing a video game, drinking and hanging out at someone's house, playing, what do friends even do? Watching a movie. Not my favorite idea because it's a passive activity, right? And I'll write some notes for myself, and maybe I'll come up with like two more. Kayaking, we have something outdoorsy already. Hiking is outdoorsy. Hiking is basically the same as kayaking. So now, okay, I'm not gonna edit yet. Just brain dump mode, no editor mode yet. Hiking, let's say hunting, word association here, gathering, shopping, let's see, cooking together, right? And now I'm gonna look at this list I've made, and I'm just gonna, in terms of my editing process, I like bowling or arcade gaming. Bowling and arcade gaming are basically the same. I like the image of bowling better, so I'm going to strike through Strike through arcade gaming. Karaokeing I like because it's just different enough from bowling. Kayaking I like. Playing D&D I like. Playing a video game I like because of this potential thing that I've highlighted that the players can play with. Drinking and hanging, I don't really like this so much. It's not super evocative. It doesn't really give the players too much to do. Watching a movie, also not my favorite idea because it's passive, so I'm gonna also cross that one out. Hiking is too similar to kayaking because they're both outdoor activities. Gathering doesn't make any sense. What are they gathering? I don't like gathering. I'm just going to strike it out. Shopping is just different enough. Cooking together is just different enough. I'm going to strike out hiking and hunting because kayaking covers it. Let's see. Yeah, strike that out. So now we've got final-ish ideas. We have... My E key is broken. Bowling, karaokeing, kayaking, playing D&D, playing a video game, shopping, cooking together. And let me change this to, let's see, a numerical table. Great, so that's 7. If I come up with one more, that can be a D8 table. Maybe roll twice and pick one. Boom, that's an easy way to get around that. Okay, so... They're gonna do a normal thing. That's baked into the premise. They're trying to do something normal, right? So boom, it makes sense that part of the rules would include a random table for them to pick the normal thing they're trying to do. Okay? Straightforward enough. They just can't, no matter what, talk about what happened last Friday. So let's go up here. What happened last Friday? Let's do another brain dump here. Ideas. Murder. They killed a member of their friend group. Okay? Friend group. Is there ghost haunting them? Question mark. Murder, threesome. / orgy. They all had sex and now they feel awkward about it. Okay. What else? A criminal activity that's not murder. This could be larceny, grand theft auto, robbery, right? / they robbed a bank. They beat someone up. Laura said humor, huh? Yeah, I think murder could still be funny, Laura. I think it could still be really, really funny. And okay, let's actually take murder and run with it for a second here. Because I think that was my original idea. That what happened last Friday is always the same, no matter the table that's playing it, and it's always going to be murder, and it's always going to be murder. They killed someone else in their friend group who's not here anymore. And my idea behind "Shut Up About Last Friday" is that you're a group of friends, you're bowling. You can't talk about the fact that you killed one of your own last Friday, except and the audience doesn't know. The audience doesn't know that it was murder. And like part of what's funny about it is like one of you feels really guilty and you keep wanting to bring it up, but the others are like, shut up. You know, and there's like mechanics for the really guilty person to guilt trip other people and bring the non-guilty people to their side. And this was my original idea, but it was like super specific, right? You're specifically at a bowling alley. You specifically killed someone. There's specifically someone who feels guilty. And there are specific mechanics for like trying to like turn the tables, right? And part of what makes it funny is the audience doesn't know what happened last Friday. And that, like, the other players are shutting down this one player that keeps trying to bring it up. Like, that's what makes it funny as well. So, let's see. That was my original idea, but let's just keep brainstorming. Let's keep brainstorming other ideas. I beat someone up. I like how it's, like, murder and then a threesome, because that's where my brain goes to immediately. They beat someone up. Yeah, the audience doesn't know. That's why it's for AP. Exactly. I kind of... am drawing inspiration from another improv game for Shut Up About Last Friday. From this improv game that I used to do in college, if you're watching this, hi Gabe, called Boardroom, where we all start sitting around a table. And we always start the game. It's a long form game, actually. So this usually takes like 10 to 15 minutes. We all the improvisers start sitting around a table, and it starts in silence. there's no specific amount of time. We all just sort of start in silence with all of our hands outstretched to the middle. And then eventually we draw our hands back and we sit and we settle into a character. And the silence has historically lasted just like several beats to like quite a few beats. And then someone breaks the silence and they say something. And the concept behind Boardroom is that we are executives, or we're people sitting around a table for a reason. That's it. We could be execs in a boardroom, right? Which is where the name comes from. We could be a family eating Thanksgiving dinner. We could be friends trying to play D&D. We could be a group of people on a sinking ship, figuring out our last moments on the ship. Right? We could be a family that has sought shelter in a storm shelter, or because like there's like a nuclear war that's about to break out, right? It's been these things in the past and we just sort of figure it out as we go, right? And that's part of the energy I kind of want to channel in this game, because unlike in improv, where the players are where the improvisers are also figuring out what's happening at the same time as the audience, this is sort of like an optimized improv scene, because you get to talk beforehand and decide beforehand what happened, and then really play through that humor for the audience here. It's sort of like improv without the risk, which is interesting. Laura says, I've never seen a game designed for AP. Yeah, Halo and Horns is designed for AP. I really want this game to be specifically even more so than Halo and Horns designed for AP. I think View Scream is designed for playing remotely, and it's a horror game, which makes it very well suited for AP. Anyway, yeah, ideas murder. It'd be interesting if the audience didn't know, but all the players did, right? And they could, especially if the players are all comedians or performers. Okay, what else? Ideas. Criminal activity that's not murder, right? They beat someone up. What else could they not want to talk about? Something embarrassing, because we've done through something dangerous and bad, and a little bit embarrassing, I guess, which is the threesome, or just awkward, I suppose, would be the threesome, especially if someone was left out. Humiliating. Okay, let's see. Someone was ditched at the altar. Someone confessed their love to someone else in the friend group and got turned down. What else? I mean, these are all the ones I can come up with now. Whenever I feel myself like reaching sort of like a brain drought, I'll move on to a different part so I can keep momentum going. Okay, so what happened last Friday? Boom. And I think to myself, do I, as a game designer, whatever they do in The Hangover, whatever they do in The Hangover, I'll put that in, that's funny. Do I, as a game designer, need to know what happened last Friday in order to continue designing this game? i.e., will the rules of the game change depending on what the unspeakable act is? And Laura also asks, do you want everyone to feel like they did something wrong or bad? That's another question to ask. Are the characters guilty? Is that why they can't talk about it? Which brings me to the other major question to ask. Why can't they talk about it? These are the options. Guilt, shame, it was illegal and they might get in trouble, okay? Let's see. They are magically compelled not to talk. If they do, they die. That's another option, eh? So there's also okay, I want characters to feel bad, but not the players. I want the players to delight in playing characters that are that are fucked up, flawed, complicated, and funny, right? And funny. Okay. So here are some critical questions I need to answer for myself. What is the tone? Yeah, that's the question. So you'll notice that in my game design process, I start with questions. I start by asking myself questions. Questions that all originate from the premise of the game, right? So what did happen last Friday, right? Why can't they talk about it, right? What's the tone of this game, right? What's the normal thing they're trying to do? Are there any other questions I'm missing? Now is the next question to ask myself. Trying to do something normal, can't talk about what? Okay, so why can't they talk about it? What will happen if they talk about it? Right? These are sort of related questions. So, like, they'll get arrested. They'll die because of a curse. They'll have to confront their own guilt. They'll be embarrassed again. Right? If we look at the potential things about what happened last Friday. Criminal activities. What are they doing? The hangover. They'll be okay. These are all potential options, right? And now let's hop down here. How does the game end? I see two possibilities. Possibility 1, they talk about it. Possibility 2, they don't talk about it. Possibility 3-ish, I'm just gonna put a tilde around 3 because I don't really know if I want to bake this in, is they kind of talk about it. But I don't actually like this one. I don't actually think that's not covered by they talk or they don't talk. Okay, and let's start with the end then, because I've got a bunch of questions, very few answers, which is fine, because I'm still currently in brain dump mode. So, you just can't, no matter what, talk about what happened last Friday. And now this is when I go back to my premise. I go back to what I think makes this funny. What I think makes this, makes this appealing to people who are potentially thinking about buying this game or wanting to play it. And I think it's really key here. I think this is the key. This is the key aspect of my game. And so I'm just going to put this up here. Even before what happened last Friday, right? What is the game of this game? What is the engine of this game? It's talking around the problem, right? You just can't, no matter what, talk about what happened last Friday. So what are mechanics? Even before mechanics about what happened, I'm going to think about mechanics for talking around the problem, right? And I'm just gonna brain dump these mechanics. One player is guilty and wants other. I'm not gonna say player. One PC, one character, right? Because I want to make sure there's a distinction here. One PC is guilty and wants to talk about it. The others don't. Resources, sliding scale, tokens, stats, etc. to convey shifting power dynamics at the table. You know, guilty PC starts with, let's see, or table guilt, friend group guilt meter, start at 2. If it gets to 5, they have to talk about it. If it gets to 0, they don't, and they finish hanging out with each other. Okay, let's take this and run with it. How do we shift the meter toward talk and toward talk and silence? Toward talk on one end and silence on the other. So these are my. I'm going to make a note to myself called CVB. This means could be better. Rename opposing poles. Okay. That's the note I'm making for myself. So ideas for shifting the meter. Right? How would you shift that meter? Discuss a detail from last Friday. say the word Friday, right? Let's get wacky here. What if at the start of the game, the players come up with a list of words they can't say? And if the guilty player, like, tricks or, like, makes the other players say these words, then the meter gets shifted over. Or the guilty player's goal is to get all the other players to say the list of banned words. Asymmetrical knowledge of banned words? Ooh, Laura says, another consequence, friend group dissolves. That's a great idea. I'm gonna put that down, actually. They don't talk about it, and the friend group dissolves. Wait, hold on. I feel like the consequence could happen either way. Right? I can see they talk about it and the friend group dissolves because they talk about it. And they're like, I didn't want to talk about this, fuck you, and they leave, right? Friend group dissolve. This could be like the special twist table. Like, what's the extra consequence? Like, what's the extra thing that happens, right? Friend group dissolves, right? I could see this happening in either possibility, I think. I'll just put that down and figure out the nitty-gritty later. Okay, asymmetrical knowledge of banned words. Does the audience know what the banned words are? Like, who knows? What's funner? Right? Let's see. Right? So you can sort of see, like, my thinking process here, just like looking at the mechanics I'm playing with. I can't be your friend now that I know you murdered our other friend. Scruff. That's really exactly. Except here, everyone knows that we murdered someone, and maybe everyone's complicit, or like one person did it, but you're all witnesses. And like the person's like, maybe the person who wants to talk about it wants to turn you all into the cops, right? And I feel like the situations would change based on what the unspeakable act is. So I'm gonna write. I'm gonna make a misc considerations, right? Situation would change, mechanics might change. Oh my god. Might change based, whoops, there you can see. Based on the situation, if it's murder, for instance, the guilty party might want to turn themselves, right, into the cops, right? If it was an embarrassing threesome or orgy, guilty party might want to address, the fact that they were left out, / not taken care of during it. If it was a robbery, guilty party might, want to return stolen goods. If it was, what other ideas did I come up with? Beat someone up. Okay, why not? If it was beating someone up, guilty party might want to apologize to the person they beat up. etc. Okay. Miscellaneous considerations. Let's go back up to the mechanics for talking around a problem, because I feel like this is really key here. Knowing words lets them watch for it. They don't know why those are. Yeah, that's right. That's a good point, Laura. So that's sort of like the next thing I was going to ask myself. Like, what changes based on who knows the words? So guilty party, let's say, doesn't know the words. So they can be tricked more easily into it. Ooh! What if the audience and guilty party knows the words, but the non-guilty parties don't? Peter suggests alien abduction! Hell, I was like, I'm missing something like that. I love that. Okay, alien abduction. I'm bolding the ones I like. I also like threesome. I don't think I like anything else. Okay, alien abduction. That's so fucking funny. Okay, audience and guilty party know the words, but non-guilty parties don't, so they can be tricked into it. But whoops. There we go. But every time a non-guilty party says a word, out of character, I think, you know, the audience, if it's live, you know, in front of a live studio audience, can cheer, etc., then people, you know, then NGP, this non-guilty party, would know a word was ticked off. I think it should be a rule that the guilty party lets NGP know when a word is crossed off. I think that's only fair, and I think that's more fun that way. Whoop. Yep. Non-guilty know 1 word per player. Interesting. Audience, yeah, audience and guilty know. This is what we're building this game together. Look at this little game, baby. We're building together, y'all. This little game, y'all. It's ours, my friend. Okay. This is great. Yeah, non-guilty know 1 word per player. I like that these are placeholder terms, right? So I always come up with like these like silly little placeholder terms when I'm designing games, and it's totally fine that you do this. Whoops. So 1 person can steer the group away. Interesting. Know 1 word per player. Interesting. I have mixed feelings about this, I think, but I'm gonna this is brain dump mode, right? So it's all ideas go, right? Like during brain dump mode, but they can't say what it is they are avoiding. So, oh, I see. Okay, this is asymmetrical also. Each NGP player knows 1 banned word, but they don't know each other's banned words. And it's against the rules to share this knowledge amongst the NGP. So we know how the GP can win. Get NGP to say all the guilty words, which triggers the end game talking about it, right? A big climactic showdown, finale, etc. So how can the NGP win, right? Because here it's just sort of delaying the inevitable. Right, because this game can go on forever until the GP gets the NGPs to say all of the guilty words, right? So how can the NGP win? There has to be a way for them to win and not talk about it. And the end game would be not talking about it, finishing their hangout as regular friends, and potentially either like what's it called? Excommunicating the GP from the friend group. Right, or dissolving the friend group. Other ideas? Yep. So this is something else I have to figure out. How can the non-guilty party win? Which is why I think I like. That's what one of the reasons I like. I like a potentially a shifting label track, and that was the other thing I was gonna say. Time could be a limiter. Definitely set a timer for this game. Say everyone decides. Yeah, everyone involved in the AP decides what the time limit is. Yep. At the start, but probably I would say 30 minutes to 1 hour. Feels fair. Or maybe, or to be more rules heavy, X minutes per number of players at the table. Could be interesting. Just ideas, right? I'm not necessarily going to use any of these. So, guilty words. How many? X per players at the table. How many non-guilty guilty parties should there be? Just 1 or several? Right? How fair is it? I think just 1, because they have a lot of power here. And yeah, I think just 1. That's what my gut's saying. Let's say there are 4 players is a typical table, right? So 3 are not guilty, 1 is guilty. So how many words make sense? 3 words would be known, right? Because there are 3 players. What feels fair? I almost want to multiply the number of players at your table by let's say 3 for now. Why not? There are 12 words to hit for a 4-player table. So 1/4 of the words are known. Yeah. At start of game. That feels fair. So 1/4 of the words are known at start. That honestly feels fair. So now, rules for the... I'm actually really excited about these rules for like banned words, because that also plays into a different improv game, which is like it's called 357, where it's kind of similar to this short form game called 357, where there are 3 performers on stage. One of them can only say 3 words at a time, one of them can only say 5, and one of them can only say 7. So I like playing with the idea of like vocabulary and what you say being important. That's fun to me. Yes, Ferris, AP meaning actual play, exactly. Either as a podcast or more likely a stream, because that's my perspective. Now, rules for the kinds of words that are allowed and generated in this list. I think NGP leave the room, right? They can't be here. They should not be privy to this process. Okay, GP and audience come up with words together. Maybe let's say in our example it's 12 words. So I think 1/4. I think because it would be really fucked up if like a guilty word was the, so there has to be rules for the kinds of words that are allowed. And usually what we do in improv is it's based on syllables. So typically the more syllables there are, the more complicated the word. So maybe like it can be like let's say it's based off of fractions for now. 1/4 of the words, 1/4 of the words are single syllables. Yeah, single syllable. 1/4, or actually, are double syllable. 1/4 are triple syllable. No, actually, yeah. Let's do single, double, triple, quadruple. Double syllables. 1/4 are triple syllables, and 1/4 are quadruple syllables. So let's for example, 12 words, 3 known. Oh, it'd be great if there were 3 categories though. So if we did 1/3, actually. Oh, yeah. No, it's fine. Let's see. Example, 12 words, 3 known. Unspeakable act is... Ooh, but then the audience would know what the unspeakable act is. Well, that's fine. Let's say in this version they do know. Unspeakable act is murder, let's say. So potential words. Oh, also depends on the kind of murder, right? So these are other like considerations, right? So let's see. So 3 single, 3 double, 3 triple, 3 quadruple. It could be kill, knife, die, / died. Okay, double. Okay. Iterations of the same word count. So kill. So if kill is a single syllable word, if a non-guilty party says killed, it will still count. Okay, so you wouldn't put like killed here, because kill or killed or killing or anything like that would count. Yeah. Kill, knife, die. Yeah, so dying would count. Yep. Double, let's see, shovel. Let's see, shovel. Yeah, stuff like right. Triple, missing, like a missing person. Missing, guilty. Okay, right, stuff like that. And I think this could be like, we come up with whatever, and then guilty party, return, game starts. And I think this is 3 pages of just pure brainstorm BS with some cool mechanics in here, with some cool ideas, ideas for how the audience can be involved if it's an actual play, ideas for incentives also. So I'm going to make another thing, actual play ideas, incentives. How can they be baked into the text of the game? Maybe hitting a certain amount of donations, subs, cheers, etc. will unlock a word for the guilty party, right? Something like that, right? That's easy, right? That we can just build into this. Okay. So I think I'm going to end my game design session here because I feel like I've got a lot of nice stuff that I've brainstormed that I can just sort of take home and continue to work on. And I think now is a good time for me to do a sign-off of this particular special lecture where you get a glimpse into my game design process. Oh, before I do that though, I always want to open things up for a Q&A. So if anyone in stream has any questions about my process, anything I've talked about the game that we've been building together that I'm going to take home and just continue refining the mechanics of later on, ask them now or forever hold your silence. And while I give you all time to think of questions, because I'm pretty sure I didn't miss any questions in the chat so far, I'm going to do a quick sign off. So I've been Connie, my pronouns are they, he, and she. I am a professional GM, game designer, and actual play performer, and actual play player and GM. Hire me for your actual play things. I'd love to run a GM, a streamed game, or a game for your podcast, or a game for your group. Pledge to my Patreon for access to Professor Chong's Tabletop Workshop when it first drops, for the ability to vote on the kinds of games I make, and for access to my GM tip articles when I do get around to writing them, and to support me, a queer Asian person in TTRPGs. Your support in my Patreon is very, very, very helpful, and I'm so grateful for it. I'm so grateful to everyone who's in chat right now watching this. So yeah, I'm going to pause right here and see if anyone has any questions. Oh, thank you, Ferris. Thank you. C says, how do you balance simplicity and specificity? That is a great question, and a process I'm still trying to figure out right now. I think for a one-page RPG, I will always err on the side of simplicity, especially if it feels like a situation where I have to choose between the two. For example, in the preview of this game that I've been making, I'm like, there are so many different things that that could be the unspeakable act. There's so many different things they could be doing that's normal. There could be so many different things that, reasons why they don't want to talk about it, right? So I think that is a process I have to figure out for myself of like, do I want these to be random tables, or do I want it to be a very specific thing that's the same for every game? And I think it's about blending the two for me. I think I'm going to end up being like, this is always going to be a game about murder, or like these like 3 things that could happen, right? So making mechanics that are just broad enough to encompass like multiple kinds of things, but also specific to the kind of game I want to play. So I think how I balance it is by looking, let's just look at it now, is by looking at this question. What is the game here, right? What is the engine of this game? And as long as my mechanics feed the engine of that game, it should be able to balance simplicity and specificity, right? Because even if it's about an alien abduction or about murder, as long as it's about talking around something, and that's 80% of 70 to 80% of my mechanics, there should be that good balance there. And the rest can be random tables, right? So I think that's how I'm going to answer that question. So, like in Honey Heist, I guess you don't have to be bears, but you could easily hack it and just swap out all instances of bear to be monkey, right? To be monkey, that could be easy, right? But it's specifically about bears, but you can see how it can be easily swappable, right? Moving on, Ferris's question is, how do you decide what type of mechanics work? For example, hidden words versus dice versus cards. I just sort of take one and run with it. You know what I mean? And I feel like one-page RPGs are the perfect place for you, even if you just pick like hidden words for this one. But later on, you can be like, I wrote a hidden word game. I want to try writing a dice game now. Or I want to try writing like a tarot card game now. Or like a poker card game now, right? One-page RPGs are great for that. And how I decide what type of mechanics work is you're gonna see this it's gonna happen off stream, right? Because right now I'm pretty enamored with the idea of hidden words. Is I'm going to write a bunch of mechanics for hidden words, and I'm gonna be like, wait, could this work if it were cards? And then I'd write a bunch of mechanics for cards, right? And then I'd write like several mechanics for dice, and then I'd bring all these mechanics to my editor, who's my partner, who's currently in chat right now, and I'd be like, which one of these is coolest, right? And I get some feedback from them, and they'll be like, words for sure, and then I'll take the words and do it. So if I'm sort of torn, then I ask for feedback in my design process, but I hold on to the mechanics I've written and I put them into soup. I put them into, I turn them into trimmings and I turn them into broth that I'll use for games later on, right? So none of this is ever wasted, right? I always see this in games down the line where it'll always help me like unlock some aspect of game design that I haven't touched on earlier. So it's always fun. Another question from Ferris. Have you ever made a one-page RPG with mixed mechanics? Not yet, I haven't. Maybe this one will be my first. Ooh, and I'm excited for it. Thank you all so much for asking your questions. Beautiful questions, and for tuning in. I hope this was useful for y'all and y'all got something out of this. And y'all feel emboldened and empowered to write your own one-page RPGs after this lecture. So again, I've been Connie. Check out Transplanar RPG this coming Saturday. That is going to be September 4th at 3 p.m. US Central Time for Arc 4, Episode 1 of our main D&D campaign, which features an all-trans POC-led class set in a non-colonial, anti-Orientalist world. So again, thank you all so much for tuning in. This has been amazing. Really appreciate all of your attentiveness. And see you later. Tonight, if you are a patron of mine, for my patron-only Kahoot tournament, I will have prizes, beautiful Froggy stickers, patches, and enamel pins. So pledge to my Patreon if you haven't pledged already, so you can attend these special monthly gaming nights with me in my Discord. Peace. Thank you. Love you, everyone. Bye.